Modern homes struggle with mold, even though we've got powered ventilation, chemical cleaners, and those expensive dehumidifiers. But, older homes, built long before electricity was common, somehow avoided chronic mold problems. This wasn't accidental, and it sure wasn't just luck. It was the result of deliberate building practices, smart material choices, and daily habits that quietly kept moisture in check, all without any machines. Understanding these methods really matters today because mold isn't just a cosmetic problem. It damages structures, ruins stored goods, and, it weakens respiratory health, especially during those cold seasons when our homes are sealed up tight. What follows here isn't about nostalgia. It's just practical knowledge, pulled from how homes were actually designed to last. Old homes were built to breathe continuously, not to trap air inside. Traditional homes were designed around constant air exchange, The walls, floors, and ceilings weren't sealed up airtight. That allowed moisture to escape naturally before it could settle and feed mold growth. Lime-based mortars, wood framing, and plaster walls all let vapor pass through slowly, instead of trapping it inside cavities. And this meant humidity rarely reached those stagnant conditions that mold really needs. Windows were positioned to encourage cross-ventilation, even in winter. A cracked upper sash and a slightly open lower window let warm, moist air escape upward while drawing in drier outside air below. This was just common knowledge back then, not some kind of theory. Folks understood that stale air meant rot. Applying this today can be as simple as controlled daily ventilation during winter, even just 10 minutes, instead of sealing a home up tight and relying on machines to fix the damage later. Building materials actually work to resist mold growth. Old homes relied on materials that mold struggles to colonize. Lime plaster is alkaline, which really inhibits fungal growth. Solid wood framing, especially old-growth timber, absorbs and releases moisture gradually instead of holding it right at the surface. Stone and brick foundations were often left exposed or just minimally sealed, allowing moisture to evaporate naturally. So modern drywall, synthetic insulation, and all those sealed composites, they really just trap moisture right up at the surface. And, once they get damp, they turn into mold incubators, plain and simple. Applying those old-timey principles today means, choosing breathable materials whenever you can, like maybe lime wash instead of modern paint down in the basement, wood shelving instead of metal in your pantry, and steering clear of plastic barriers and spots that tend to get condensation. All of that kind of mimics what folks did for centuries, and honestly, it worked. Back in the day, heat sources in old homes dried out the air as a sort of side effect. Fireplaces, wood stoves, and coal burners, they all put out radiant heat that naturally knocked down indoor humidity. Plus, these systems pulled air up and out through chimneys, creating a steady airflow even when the doors and windows were shut tight. That upward draft just kept on removing moisture from living spaces all the time. Now, modern central heating, it just recirculates the same air without actually removing any moisture unless you pair it with some kind of ventilation. In the winter, that can mean warm, kind of damp interiors where mold just loves to take hold. So, a real practical takeaway here is to make sure you've got some vertical airflow when you're heating your place. Even something as simple as a passive vent or a regularly used exhaust flue can sort of copy that drying effect those old heating systems gave us, and you don't even need fancy technology to do it. Homes were elevated and moisture was managed at ground level. Older homes were rarely built flush to the ground. Crawl spaces, stone piers, and raised foundations allowed airflow beneath the structure, preventing moisture from rising into floors and walls. Earth contact was limited and deliberate. Basements, when present, were designed to stay cool and dry through airflow rather than sealing. Today, mold often starts from ground moisture trapped beneath sealed slabs or poorly ventilated crawl spaces. Applying historical logic means ensuring airflow under floors, avoiding plastic ground covers without ventilation, and allowing soil moisture to dissipate instead of trapping it under modern barriers. Daily habits controlled moisture long before machines existed. People managed humidity through behavior. Cooking was done with windows cracked. Wet clothing was dried near heat sources or outdoors, not inside sealed rooms. Floors were scrubbed and allowed to dry fully. Water spills were addressed immediately because moisture damage was understood as a structural threat, not a cosmetic inconvenience. Even bathing routines mattered. Bath water was often dumped outside and steam was vented naturally through open windows. Applying this knowledge today means treating moisture as an enemy that must leave the building, not something to mask with scented sprays or electric devices. Storage practices prevented mold before it started. Pantries, root cellars, and cupboards were designed to stay cool, dry, and ventilated. Food was never stored against exterior walls without airflow. Shelves were spaced, not flush-mounted. Air movement was always part of storage design. This matters for preppers today. Stored grains, clothing, paper, and medical supplies fail due to moisture long before pests become an issue. Using wooden shelving, spacing items away from walls, and allowing passive airflow through storage areas mirrors practices that kept supplies mold-free for decades without electricity. Roofs and overhangs were designed to shed moisture aggressively. Older roofs extended well beyond walls, Wide eaves protected siding and foundations from rain splash and snow melt. Water was directed away from the structure through grading and stone channels rather than buried drainage systems that fail silently. Mold often starts when exterior moisture penetrates walls repeatedly. Applying this knowledge today means ensuring water never lingers near the structure. Simple grading corrections, extended drip edges, and open drainage paths outperform many modern waterproofing products when maintained properly. Seasonal adjustments were part of normal living. Homes were managed differently in winter and summer. Winter meant controlled ventilation, steady heat, and dry interiors. Summer meant open windows, shaded walls, and constant airflow. Folks adapted the house to the season rather than forcing a single environment year-round. Modern mold problems often come from keeping those summer humidity levels inside homes that are sealed up tight for the winter. If you think about it, applying some old logic here means letting your indoor conditions shift a bit with the seasons, instead of always fighting nature with sealed systems that, tend to fail quietly. Old homes, they stayed mold-free because moisture just wasn't allowed to sit around and stagnate. Air moved, materials breathed, and heat did the drying. Folks' habits kept the whole system working. No single feature handled it all by itself. It was really an integrated approach, built on understanding how buildings break down over time. You can apply this today without needing to rebuild your house. Just vent daily, even in the winter. Choose breathable finishes, especially in damp areas. Make sure to allow vertical airflow. Keep your storage up off the ground and ventilated. Treat moisture as a structural risk, not just an inconvenience. These are low-tech solutions that have been proven over centuries, not just some marketing trends. Mold. It weakens homes, ruins supplies, and compromises health long before any sort of collapse becomes visible. Older builders really understood that longevity depended on dryness and airflow. That kind of understanding has been mostly lost in favor of convenience and short-term efficiency. Recovering this knowledge isn't about rejecting modern tools. It's about understanding the fundamentals, so technology actually supports good design, instead of just making up for bad decisions. Honestly, history already solved a lot of the problems we're struggling with again today. If this kind of deep historical insight matters to you, go ahead and subscribe to Warfield Prepper Chronicles. Share this with others who care about real-world resilience and help keep these lessons alive before they disappear again.